Robert, firstly, let's really start at the basics because, in terms of the overall space, we saw a bull market. Then now we're in a kind of bear market. So there isn't as much kind of hype at the moment surrounding different projects, and inevitably a lot of people leave the space. So there isn't as much news for kind of the newbie. So let's kind of dissect, firstly, kind of the difference between, you've got this new evolving sphere called Web 3.0, and we are currently in Web 2.0. Let's kind of dissect the difference between the two, if you could, and then just kind of explain, how you see things from there.
So I think the best explanation that I've seen, the way that it's been really distilled to the sort of core benefit of sort of why it exists in the first place, is Web 1. If you think about a file on your computer, right, you can have read access and you can have write access, right? So read access means you can view the file, but you can't edit it. And that's how people saw kind of Web 1. It was difficult to create things on the internet, like creating a website, creating content. We didn't have social media. So that was Web 1. That was about reading. Of course, you could make a website, but it was very difficult, right? So Web 1 was about the reading. It was about consumption. Then we got social media, and it became a lot easier to create blogs. We had all WordPress and these sorts of platforms that allowed people to create. So that's the write access. So Web 1 was read, Web 2 was write. It became a lot easier to produce content, not just consume, and products and things of that nature. And then we get to Web 3, which they summarize as own, right? So you got read, write, and own. So own is about the ability to own property on the internet. And so with that, it kind of changes a lot of things, right? Which we will sort of discuss today. But I don't see a world where technology starts to reverse, right? Like we're getting, technology is just innovating all the time, and it's consuming our lives more and more and more. And so I just don't see that trend reversing. And so if you think about that, it's like, I just don't see a world where it doesn't make sense for people to be able to own things on the internet and prove that ownership. Because, I heard a professor from like some California university the other day, and he was asking his class every semester, it's like, who thinks they have the most screen time here? And there would always be a couple of people, like 9 hours a day. It's like we're living online so much these days that some of the things that we have in the offline world has to be transferred over because we're spending so much of our time. And I also think that a lot of these things are not new. It's just a better way to do them. And what I mean by that, as an example, is, I used to play this shitty game called Tibia back in the day. And it was funny. This was like early 2000s. And this game was kind of crappy even back then, but it was a multiplayer game. It was fun. You'd have this character, you build it up, and, you had like an in-game currency, and you had, you had like a warrior, and you could buy like a different sword or a weapon, and the shields and all these things. And they had value. But yeah, this was really funny. I specifically remember, in order to get a premium account, me and my friends living in Sweden at the time, we would have to go to the currency exchange office, get some US dollars, put them in an envelope, send them to Germany where the company was, and they would like manually upgrade you to a premium account. So that's how ancient that was. But the point I wanted to make here was that me and my friends, we would build up these characters, and the items that we had in the game, they had value to other people, and we could sell them for real money, and we did. It was just inefficient. It was done. You had to trust the other person. There wasn't an exchange where we could do it officially. It was, everything was kind of like over the counter kind of thing. And you couldn't trust them. It's not like we were using like an escrow service or something like that. So things like that have always been done, right? It's not a new thing that's being done. It's just a much more efficient way to do it. And one of the main things there is the fact that you can remove trust from the equation, right? So if I want to sell you my character, or if I want to sell you my shield, I can do that, but I don't need to trust you. And I can just put it up on, some kind of marketplace that each game usually has, and sell it to you. And then there's sort of in-game currency, and, value is really often about perception, right? So if I'm playing a game with 10 million other people, and it's like played in a city, and there's like a hotspot in the city, like, to me, that hotspot is going to have value. So like if I can own that piece of property, and maybe in the game you need to, like, you know, have a house to live, maybe you need to pay rent. So you could own a property in a game and collect rent through the in-game currency. And like, that's just sort of the entertainment side. There's other, you know, non-entertainment use cases, obviously. But that's kind of how I see it. Like, so I think a lot of people look at Web3 as completely revolutionary. I actually don't see it that way. What I do see it is that it allows us to do things that we have been doing before, but it just allows us to do it in a proper way. So I think I actually don't think it is tremendously revolutionary in terms of like the problem it solves, because the problem has already been solved in many cases. In some cases not, but some of those problems have already been solved, and we're just solving them in a better way, you know? So that's kind of how I like to think of read, write, own. And it allows you to, you know, a lot of things basically end up becoming decentralized. And if you put out a piece of content, then you can actually own that piece of content. You can sell that piece of content because things have value on the internet, even though, you know, the joke is that you can screenshot an NFT, right? And it's like, oh, now I have it too. But there's value in things online. And so being able to own them also has value and makes sense. And, you know, having digital currency also makes sense. How does it, again, coming back to how much time we spend online, how does it not make sense to have like digital money? Like we have to have digital money. So that's kind of how I think about it.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think the biggest thing that I see and the biggest benefit is at the moment, when it comes to earning, big tech take the biggest slice of the pie as such. Whereas now it's kind of for the end user. You know, you could, like you said, you can own an element of that, and you can actually get paid for the content or the game that you play in that respect. So that completely makes sense.
I think, you know, also a lot of times, like the end user was the reason why something succeeded, right? So you take YouTube, for example. YouTube doesn't succeed without the creators that were on the platform early, putting out content, making it into a place that people wanted to come and, you know, watch videos. And so they never got a piece of the upside, even though they deserved it, because they really helped build it. And so that's what Web3 also brings, is that you give people a piece of the upside that they help create. And they didn't really get that before. So that's another really cool thing that comes out of this.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I think it's going to be interesting to see how certainly companies evolve as well, because I think once people understand that they can, like you said, they can own some digital real estate, or they can earn from the content they produced on a greater percentage. You know, you can still earn YouTube revenue, but it's, again, the company as such is making the larger, or owning the larger share of that. So it's going to be interesting to see how some of these companies like YouTube, Facebook, Meta evolve, and whether they do, and the distinction between the two.
And let me throw another example in here as you were talking about that, because, you know, I think we lose a lot of people when we talk about digital real estate and that sort of thing, which I understand, because it's like I'm not really into that either. Like the gaming example is just an example, but it's not really something that I get excited about.